Hey guys, Elizabeth with Willow Root Tarot, and we're going to be reading from Way of the Horse. This is card 32. This is an oracle deck, and the card's name is a surprise. It's Out of Body. The card's name is Out of Body. Transcendence, dissociation, and surviving or thriving. Let me get my tongue in my head so I can speak. 3 gray horses head for the hills and leap into the clouds. Are they gaining a higher perspective or disconnecting from reality? And I personally don't see these 3 horses going up into the clouds. They could be right in front of me. Oh, I see them now. Holy crap, their heads are huge. They are the clouds. Did not see that. Okay. So let's go ahead and say that we're going to read the gift. The ability to transcend normal awareness allows you to integrate paradox and to access innovative states of mind. The challenge. Sometimes dissociating from sensation and emotion is more about surviving than thriving. Habitually floating above uncomfortable situations can lead to disempowerment. The journey. We all dissociate to a certain extent, like when we're driving across town in heavy traffic and suddenly find ourselves at work with little memory of how we got there. In extreme situations like car accidents and physical abuse, dissociation is a powerful survival instinct that kicks into gear when the victim is restrained. If you can't fight or run away from a particularly painful or horrifying situation, some part of your awareness withdraws, anesthetizing strong sensation and distorting time, perception, and memory. Peter A. Levine characterizes dissociation as a gift to us from the wild in his book, Waking the Tiger, Healing Traumas. He cites it as one of several responses available to reptiles and mammals when they're faced with an overwhelming threat. Most of us are familiar with flight and fight. Less is known about what scientists call the immobility or freeze response. Woody Allen once remarked that he wasn't afraid of dying. He just didn't want to be there when it happened. In this characteristic one-liner, Levine observes, Allen quips a fairly accurate description of the role played by disassociation. It protects us from the impact of escalating arousal. If a life-threatening event continues, dissociation protects us from the pain of death. Prey animals like horses and impalas engage this altered state when they're pulled down by predators. To give readers an idea of what the freeze response feels like in such extreme situations, Levine offers a quote from David Livingstone's diary. While traveling through Africa, the famous explorer, who was almost eaten by a lion, found himself in a strangely comforting reverie after the animal grabbed him by the shoulders and shook him violently. The shock produced a stupor similar to that which seems to be felt by a mouse after the first shake of the cat, Livingstone reported. It caused a sort of dreaminess in which there was no sense of pain nor feeling of terror, though I was quite conscious of all that was happening. The shake annihilated fear and allowed no sense of horror in looking around the beast. This peculiar state is probably produced in all animals killed by the carnivore, and if so, is a merciful provision by our benevolent Creator to lessen the pain of death. Survivors of rape or war may literally feel as if they're having an out-of-body experience during the original trauma. From a corner of the ceiling, the victim watches herself being violated and feels sorry for or neutral towards the defenseless person below. She may involuntarily freeze at the slightest sign of trouble for quite some time after the original threat passes. Yet dissociation is not an appropriate long-term coping strategy. By habitually checking out, She loses contact with the internal warning system that tells her to get out of harm's way. She may also have difficulty dealing with family problems effectively. Either she shies away from promising romantic relationships at the slightest sign of disagreement, or she lets her husband, and later her children, walk all over her when a difference in opinion leads to heightened emotions. Classic horse breaking techniques that involve fear and intimidation actually capitalize on the prey animal's heightened freeze response, creating machine-like mounts who will stand saddled at a hitching post all day. If you encounter one of these so-called well-trained equines, he'll have a distant, vacant look in his eyes and little discerning personality. Tribal cultures would say the horse has lost his spirit. It's possible to rehabilitate such an animal by helping him to exercise his natural fight or flight responses and gain confidence in gently expressing his emotions. You might want to start him under saddle again with less invasive techniques, because when he wakes up, he may be feistier than you expect as he releases the pent-up energy of his original trauma. Levine discusses this process in his book. The horse is also unlikely to remember everything he learned in the original disempowered state. Not all dissociation is trauma-related, however. In its mildest form, Levine reveals it manifests as a kind of spaciness, allowing the average office worker to sit at a desk all day when his body would otherwise object. People are actually trained from an early age to disengage from emotion and sensation to a certain extent, and it's not a bad thing when you learn to modulate it. Marathon runners find it beneficial to float above the inevitable discomfort, yet if you habitually freeze or disconnect in stressful situations, you'll have difficulty following your dreams or succeeding in business. Employees who can't think under pressure or handle heated interpersonal encounters are not considered management material. They tend to be passed over for promotions, no matter how dedicated and talented they otherwise prove themselves to be. Certain dissociative states are highly creative. The psychiatrist Aaron Katcher, co-author of Between Pets and People, The Importance of Animal Companionship, and numerous scientific studies on animal-assisted therapy, introduced me to the idea that there are actually two forms of dissociation. Discordant dissociation, that survival-oriented mindset, and concordant dissociation, an innovative, transcendent state. Clinically, he says, we most often see dissociation as an ego defense that serves to wall off or exclude feeling and sensation in order to protect the ego that might otherwise be overwhelmed. Typically, patients in this state are unable to feel emotion or recognize bodily states, and in extreme cases are actually out of their bodies. In defensive dissociation, the subject is disabled because the information about bodily state is not available to the ego. There are, however, altered states of consciousness that are dissociative in the sense that regular or habitual ego executive function is partially suspended, but in which action or perception is facilitated or enhanced rather than disabled. The athlete who finds time slowing down as she experiences and merges with the event, setting aside for the moment the awareness of herself as an actor, can be said to be in a dissociative state, but one which coordinates and enhances performance. The main difference between survival dissociation and its more creative counterpart involves protecting the ego by walling it off from internal or external sensation, and suspending the ego so that sensation and action can be organized in a new way. In discordant dissociation, the mind has less to work with and cannot marshal the information it needs to act effectively, tending to freeze and become more compliant. In accordant dissociation, Katcher reports, the ego doing the processing is not the usual waking ego, but what I like to call a charged ego, in the sense that the subject is charged with a specific task. and can plumb areas of the mind usually not available. Both forms share time and reality distortion. Thought process shifts from words to images. The rules of logic are suspended and that contradiction is absent, and the ego may be in different places simultaneously. A writer, artist, or musician immersed in a project may be lured out of a creative state by an aching belly. Looking at the clock, he's surprised to find that 6 hours have gone by and lunch is long overdue. He might speak of being seduced by a muse who seemed to take over during that time, recognizing another classic symptom of concordant dissociation. A person's normal sense of willing what is being done may be absent. While the freeze response tends towards submission to the situation and a loss of will, the concordant state surrenders to a higher power capable of integrating paradox, marshaling both sensory and extrasensory resources. Many animal communicators access concordant dissociation when they engage in non-local conversations with pets while talking to their owners over the phone. Yet I've also seen horses treat an intuitive as if she's invisible when she's literally in their presence, confirming that even in a supernatural perceptive altered state, a significant part of this person is not there. Horses sometimes trip these same states in people during simple interactions. And while the information and inspiration can be incredibly valuable, it's important to remember that you're not present when you're dissociating. To stay safe, you must be able to assess when a shift is occurring and take measures to protect your body while your mind is sailing off into the heavens. If you're riding, you might want to get off your horse and walk. If you're milling around with your herd in pasture, you might want to step outside the fence and continue your journey under the nearest tree. To use dissociation to your advantage, you must ultimately be willing to assess whether you're heading into an altered state to avoid something stressful and unpleasant, or to access a creative, transcendent consciousness capable of greater insight and innovation. Both concordant and discordant dissociation are useful at times, but if you're constantly wandering around with your head in the clouds, you'll miss out equally important, fulfilling experiences on Earth.